now?
My name is Jan Bernath, and I'm here in the Chelsea Museum with my longtime childhood friend, Sandy Buehler Weber. It's April 11th, no it's not 19, what is it, 2017. So I'm Jan, and this is my friend Sandy. We were both born in 1940, and we became friends before we knew what we knew. Here's a picture of us taken in her front yard on Elm Street.
Notice the barn in the back.
Notice the barn in the back.
It was the last thing in town, I think.
That was the last thing, yeah. And Elm Street has extended, and we have a new development, which actually covers that entire field, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. And then some, yes.
So, do you have that?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought we'd talk about how our families came to Chelsea a little bit. And Sandy, you want to tell your story?
My father was born here, so I'm not sure how his family arrived or when. I haven't checked that out. But he was here, and my mother was from International Falls, Minnesota. Until we acquired Alaska, was always the coldest spot in the nation. You could hear it. And my mother came down here as a 15-year-old, rode down here on a bus to help her brother, who already was in Chelsea, with a family, a young family, and they needed help with the children. So she came down on the bus, and she happened to come in March, and we were having an unusually warm, wonderful day, and she just fell in love with this place, and she never went back to International Falls except for a couple of visits. I don't know how my mother and dad met, but they met here in Chelsea. And her sister, one of her sisters, also came down later when she heard how great it was, right? And at the time, they were known as, because there weren't very many new people in town, they were known as the big blonde and the little blonde. My mother was the little blonde, believe it or not. But, anyway, that's how we ended up here.
And my family, the Bernath family, they were originally settled in northern Ohio. And my granddad, George Bernath, was enticed to go out to Kansas. And so he took my grandmother and the two boys, Louis and Russell, and went out to Kansas and proceeded to lose everything. And so they came back to visit Archbold, Ohio, but a relative of my grandmother had a store here, and he got Grandma and Grandpa a job at the Old People's Home, which is now the Chelsea Retirement Center. So Grandma did the laundry, and Grandpa did all the mechanicals. So that's how they got here, and that was like in the late 30s. My dad, I don't know what Dad was doing at that time, but he was a young man, and my mother was at Eastern Normal School doing a thing to become a teacher, and her roommate was my dad's cousin. So they met they had a date on New Year's Eve. And anyway, they were married, and they eloped to Angola, Indiana. And we were rather itinerant. We lived around town for a long time. We rented on McKinley Street. We rented up above what used to be Kuster's, now what, La Jolla.
Yeah,
Jewelry
probably.
store. Yeah, we rented up there. We lived with my grandma and grandpa for a while on West Middle, until finally my dad built a home with my granddad in 1948 out on Sibley Road. So it was the first home in Chelsea to have radiant heating in the floor. So we could go barefoot. Remember sitting on that floor?
I totally remember. It was just wonderful to me.
Yeah.
It was a tiled floor, but we could sit on it in the winter and perfectly warm. I couldn't get over that.
You're right. You wanna talk about where you live?
Oh, well, out near that field in
Yeah.
that picture, but I'm at the end of Elm Street. And, gosh, I can't believe, I think my mother talks about having bought that house for $3,500 or something like that. And the fact is, I lived my whole life there until I was married. And it was a great neighborhood to live in, being way out like that. We had fields beyond us, and not just the cornfield, but there was another field that the village owned, village at the time. And we could go over in those fields and play all day long. And we had quite a few children on the block. And in fact, that continued as I became a teenager. My job was babysitting, and I could babysit almost every day of the week if, I mean,
Yeah,
it was
go to
just
school.
Yes, there was a lot of, every weekend was babysitting, and I remember making $0.25 an hour. Yeah, so,
So one story about living on McKinley Street is I at the age of 4 when we were living there, I went uptown to buy an ice cream cone by myself. So that would be how many blocks?
oh gosh.
5 or 6 blocks,
Yeah,
up to Berg Drugs. They had a soda fountain in the front of the store. And it meant I crossed the railroad tracks by myself. And as I got the ice cream cone, then my mother was called. Or whoever was working there knew enough who I was, called my mother, and she came and got me, and I learned about not doing that again. So,
How much was the ice cream cone?
I don't know, I probably charged it. I didn't know you had to pay for things.
Made it all the way up there.
Yeah. So then, another place we were living before my dad built a home on Sibley Road was out at Kavanaugh Lake. So during my kindergarten year, I went to Riemenschneider School, and it's on Mushball Road, which meant that I would walk up the road to meet other kids, and we would walk 1.5 miles to school, to this kindergarten. I was in kindergarten.
Was it one room?
One room schoolhouse, and then of course back. So I don't remember much about that experience, because then we moved in town, and so we were in first grade together. And we have the first grade picture.
Because that's also part of your wallpaper in the front
Yeah,
room of
right. This is on the wall in the period room. It's this right here,
The bottom one?
the bottom one.
How many kids?
Well,
Good.
geez, there's 2 teachers there. We had 2 first grade rooms.
Mhm.
I don't know how many kids there are there. I'd have to look at it to count them.
Are you both in that class?
Yes, we were both in that class, and
Right.
many of our lifelong friends are, in this
Name some
picture.
names.
Well, Nancy Mayer, who married Jim Grau, Judy Wagner, Kay Vogel Weinberg. I'd have to look at the picture. Who else is in this
Lois
picture?
Schiller.
Lois Schiller.
Byron Pearson.
Yeah.
What were the
Bill
what were
Lake.
the teachers' names?
I'd have to look at that now to remember. Oh, Mrs. Maroney and Mrs. Hale.
Okay. Yeah.
Maroney
So
they both lived here and had families of their own.
I'm amazed that I actually have a bow in my hair.
She always accused me of being the one with the bow
Yeah.
in there and the
So
white socks.
this was actually the second school on the corner of Park and East. Union Schools was built in 1860, and then this school, which is the one we attended, was built in 1873. So that would have gone K through 12 at that time, in 1873, surely.
Yes.
Sandy and I both have horror stories about the 3rd grade, because the 3rd grade was on the 2nd floor, so you finally got upstairs, and you had to go down a fire escape slide, and we had to practice this.
Yeah,
and Sandy remembers
fire drills. And,
Yeah.
It was just a scary thing.
Was it,
Big round metal tube thing. And they would get spots in them that were wearing, and they would use like,
They'd have to
they'd
weld
solder
it.
them and weld them at the seams where they were joined. And that would work loose a little bit, and I'd be afraid of hitting that and getting cut, because people did get cut on those pieces of sodding that were sticking up anyway. And then when you got to the end, you went so fast on it, and we were young. I mean, you got down at the end and you just shoot out the thing, and you hope you're going to land on your feet. And quite often there was a big puddle of water at the end because it had rained, and you had to try to avoid that. And it was not a fun experience.
No, it was not. Third grade was a terrifying experience. And I had just moved to Sibley Road, and one of the first things we did in that class was to say where we lived. And I said, I don't know. Because I really didn't know where I lived. I moved a lot.
Right.
So, what do we want to talk about next?
Well, okay.
Walking uptown, walking home, yeah. So-
yeah,
She lived at the end of Elm Street,
just quite a ways out there.
quite a ways.
The last-
For lunch, we would walk
Okay.
home, and I would walk to my grandparents who lived on West Middle for lunch. That was in our elementary school.
Yeah,
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I think junior high and high school that I would take a sack lunch usually. Not always, but once in a while.
Okay.
But we didn't seem to do that in the elementary
Yeah.
classes. I don't know why. Walked home. But what did
Well,
the kids do from?
Well,
Well,
they
we
were
weren't
still-
consolidated yet.
Yeah, they were still
yeah.
at country schools,
Yeah, they were country
the
schools.
Catholic schools and country
Yeah.
schools. So Sandy got the really nice teacher in 5th grade. What was her name?
Mrs. Veldman.
Mrs. Veldman. And I got Mr. Shell, who was an ex-Marine. And so in 5th grade, he would have us marching around the desk singing, "Give me some men who are stout-hearted men," and then we would do jumping jacks, and I mean, it was, we had phys ed in the corners of the room. So I was very envious of my friend who had the nice teacher. I'm sure Mr. Shaw was
Indeed, she was.
okay, yeah. And during that year too was when, during the presidential election. And so we had a mock election. And I was Eisenhower. And Denny Shum was Adelaide Stevenson, and I don't remember the rest of them.
Yeah, I don't
But we would go out on the playground and we would have these placards, so trying to get the votes. I think Eisenhower did win.
He
Because, yeah.
Adlai Stevenson was never
Yeah,
president. So
right.
yes. No, he did.
Yeah, resounding.
I have the I like Ike button. You know, the
Yeah,
pin that
I
people
do
wore.
too.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So, do we want to then move on, or do you have
Well, I
something
just have
more
one thing
from-
I wanted to mention about when living at a young age on Elm Street, that my father was called into the service in the Army, and he was pretty old for being brought into the service, but that's where they got to the point where they were calling in older men in the World War II. And yes, he was called in, and so to help earn some money, my mother rented out a room in our house to a school teacher. And she rented it 2 different teachers over the almost 3 years that he was. But one of them turns out to be my kindergarten teacher, so I got to ride to school with her.
Oh, wow. And here I was
Yes.
walking a mile and a
Yes,
half.
and I was, that's the only time I got rides to school, believe me. Oh, I did ride home once in a while with, we had a Weinberg Dairy here in Chelsea, and there was a home delivery service, and this fellow was sort of a distant relative of mine anyway. He would occasionally let me ride in the truck, and he'd drop me off. Yeah.
Yeah. One
Those
thing
were
that
the
was
days.
really neat about the elementary school was it had a fine playground. And so, since it was centrally located, I mean, it was right in the middle of town,
Yeah.
kids would go there on the weekends and play.
Sure.
And I remember in particular the swings. and then not the swings, so the rings, where you would have to jump up and grab a hold of a ring and then go propel yourself across. And that was quite an exercise. And they also had a nice yard with trees. So it was really a community playground that kids could use during the off school days.
That's where we had big bonfires at Halloween.
Is that where we had?
Yeah, not on that part of the playground, but the farthest part east, down near what used to be tennis courts. They would just pile up wood and cardboard and everything for a couple of weeks ahead of time because it was a huge bonfire. And the Kiwanis here, which I don't know if they still do, but for right up till recent years, they always served donuts and cider.
Didn't we
had judging of the costumes?
That was a judging of the costumes, and then whoever won. I never did. Did you?
What? No, I don't think I did.
Yeah.
I think I just thought I should have.
But anyway, then the kids who won would go up on the stage in the gymnasium / auditorium,
Right.
And parade and get their prize. And so, and Halloween was really very special because we went in groups, much as they do now, except I think our parents didn't examine the candy.
Oh, no.
Didn't he?
No, didn't
No,
really
but
need to.
do you remember going into Mrs. McClure's house?
Up on Washington
Yeah.
Street? No, I never got up there.
Well, I remember going into Mrs. McClure's house. Now the Merkles, Jack and Marianne Merkel lived there.
Okay.
And you would go in and you would go back to the kitchen and she would frost your name on the cookie.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
that
nice.
was
No,
it.
I didn't.
You didn't get there?
No.
Okay. Well, do we want to move on to then going into high school, or middle school rather?
Very possibly, but one
What?
more quick thing that I had mentioned, because I think it was interesting that at that point in my life, in what year would that have been? I don't know. And we had a taxi service here in Chelsea.
Yes.
His name was Charlie Bycraft, and he lived down on McKinley Street, down near where I lived. But he had uptown, there was a little stand over here on East Middle Street that he had. Then in the winter he had a little heater in there that he'd sit in. He had the one car and he had his telephone in there. And if he'd get a call, he could. And I think I remember some of the last times riding with my mother, we would walk uptown always because we didn't have a car. We would walk uptown 2-3 times a week to get what we wanted for dinner and stuff.
There were a lot of grocery stores.
And there were a lot of grocery
Yeah,
stores at that
yeah.
time, and a couple of meat markets. And we would probably, like I do still today, pick up more than you plan to get when you go, right? And so we would take the taxi home because
Oh,
we had all this stuff to carry.
Yeah.
But those were fun. And he also sold Christmas trees up there every winter. Strung up some lights and had the trees leaning up against the brick building here. And then he had them also at his home on
McKinley.
and you remember buying
I remember
there?
we bought the trees on
I
McKinley
have
Street.
fond
yeah.
memories of shopping for that
Yeah.
Christmas tree, yeah.
So yes, many people shop downtown because there were a lot of grocery stores. The one store that I do remember was Weber's Meat Market, because when you went in there, he would give each child, or maybe it was only me, I don't know, but
Just a favorite.
no, I mean, he'd give us a hot dog.
Yeah.
And then you just stood there and ate the hot dog, and it was good. So that's the only store I remember. For the large part, since we lived on Sibley Road, and Cub Vogel had a store, a general grocery store, and I don't remember what else he had there, but we shopped. It was only two properties down at Cub Vogel's store. So, which is now was the Tree of Life and whatever else is out there.
It was the antique place, but
yeah.
they've since closed.
Yeah, I don't know when Cub went out of business.
Well, he sold to Mr. Baxter for one
Oh,
thing.
that's right.
And then Baxter sold to some people named Rickelman, and it kept going on.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
oh, Mr. Shoemaker was in there too. Mr. Shoemaker that he had that for years, and he used to do deer processing and so on. Lots of, yeah. Oh, the memories.
And my dad, for a while, was in business with Lloyd Heidloff. And at that time, it was called Frigid Products because they began this business of freezers. So for economical reasons, people would buy like a quarter of a cow or a half of, or a steer. I don't know, which do you eat? But anyway, my dad was responsible for putting those freezers in the basement and keeping them running, even though he was working by that time down at Federal Screw Works, where Sandy's dad was called into the service. My dad had been in an accident in an early age, and he had no hearing on one side, and his vision in one eye was limited. So he was in a war-related occupation. So, and plus they wouldn't accept him anyway. But so one of the, I think, benefits of having Dad be in business with Lloyd was when it came time to apply for a job, the premier job, I think it was really the premier job, was working in a record store. So Lloyd, in addition to all these freezers in the basement, and he sold appliances and a wide variety of stuff, radios. Well, there was a record store. Just as you went in the front door, you turned to the left, and there were all these 78s, and 45s were just coming in. But so I was the salesperson there. And I think this was an after-school job
and weekends.
and weekends.
Is this in the same building where High Love is now?
Well, the one that burned.
There was a large stone building, which was really 3 stories, wasn't it? Because it was the basement.
Well, the basement was
Yeah.
functional as
Yeah.
a business.
And then the second floor was the store, and I think there was a 3rd floor.
Yeah, there wasn't much up there.
Yeah,
It was
but I mean,
storage, but yes.
probably storage. Yeah. So, so here's how you bought a record. You went in, you said, do you have, for instance, blue suede shoes? Yeah, we do. So then either you would direct the person over to whatever the producer, maybe it was Decca or I don't know. But anyway, somehow it was alphabetized so you could easily find these records. And then you would take the record and take the person in this little sound room, and then they would just close the door and listen to it and decide
if they wanted
to buy it or not. And so, anyway, I had to order the records. I kept track of what was on top. You know, I was looking at some trade magazine and ordering the records. But one time, George Staffen is a well-known family in town, and he came in and he bought the last 78 of blue suede shoes, and he went out the door rather vigorously and slammed it into the door jamb and broke the record.
Yes, they were breakable.
Yes, they were very breakable.
Was that Elvis Presley?
It was Elvis Presley, yeah. So that was how I earned money when I was in high school.
And I did the
In
babysitting.
Eugene, she was the town babysitter.
What about brothers and sisters?
Well, my mother, I was born at 138 East Middle, when it was a hospital there for about 4 years. A mutual friend of ours was born a week later, and then another classmate was born. So 3 of us were in the hospital at the same time. My mother had a second child, but it died during the birth process. So and she was advised not to have any more children. And Sandy, you want to talk about where you were born?
I was born at home, and I think I'm close to being one of the last in this area to be born in their home. And it was a Dr. Sibbald. I think he might have delivered you,
probably,
but in that hospital. But he came to our house. That it was, I was born at the end of July, and hot, humid, time. And I guess I hear that the neighbors could all smell the ether.
Oh,
that my mother was being given, and it was a long process, and my dad was found out laying underneath a bush in the yard just to cool off and try to, in the middle of the night, just to get away from the ether, It was a crazy time, but I was one of the last I went around here.
But did you tell me that there was another baby that your mother
My
had?
mother did, and I didn't know about it. She had miscarried before I was born.
Oh, before,
Mhm.
okay.
So, but it turns out we're both
Only
children.
children. So should we talk about going into middle school?
Sure.
And okay, so we were. This is a school we attended. Middle school and high school students were mixed in together. There was no separate.
No.
And I think we called it junior high, didn't we?
Mhm.
Junior high and senior high. And this building was designed and built by Claire Allen, and it was, let's see, the high school was built in 1910, and as I said earlier, we were the last class to graduate from this building. Afterwards, then, this whole complex became a middle school. Then, in 1920, the gym and auditorium was built, and it connected the elementary school to the high school. So, and when they were doing that, when they were building this gymnasium, they unearthed this large boulder, which then stood on the corner of Harrison and East for years. And the class of 1957, do you have a picture of that?
Well, I have a picture that shows.
Oh, the boulder, yeah.
Yeah, the boulder.
Yeah.
And the fact is, this has a 58 on it, which was the year we graduated. But 57 had done the deed first.
Right.
Painted 57 on that rock.
They daringly painted that rock.
Right.
And
Is that
and then that boulder was moved to Pierce Park. And that's the one that everybody writes on. And nobody's afraid anymore
Nope.
of being caught. That was moved in 1989.
57 and 58 were
Yeah, 57.
started all
50
that.
Started it
Yeah.
all, yeah. So that's kind of a fun deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't know about the rock being in that corner. So in middle school, I had some of the teachers that made an impression on me. Oh, I guess this is more not in middle school; it's in high school, right?
Right.
Was Bob Taylor?
We're almost halfway done.
Okay,
So-
so we're good. Was Bob Taylor? He taught math, and again, I seem to remember the traumatic things. He was very cute.
We all wanted to take driver's training for him.
Yeah. Didn't he coach
But I got
basketball?
Mr. Glasser. Yes,
He did. Okay, but I remember, like I said, traumatic things. The kid sitting in front of me passed out in the alley, not the alley, what do you call it?
Always?
No. Between the desks.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
The aisle.
The aisle, thank you, there we go. And Miss Fox, both Sandy and I remember Miss
She
Fox.
probably was most impressionable for me.
And what
Taught me more.
What was it that you remember most
The
about her?
English stuff, the things that she had little sayings and little ways of learning and remembering and stuff, and there are things I remember to this day. You know, like she would say, she had the phrase that the boy walked blank the bridge. Now, if you could put a word in there and it sounded right, then it was a preposition. All prepositions could be. It was just a way we were trying to. We didn't really dissect.
We didn't
Sentences
diagram.
then,
no.
diagram them, but
No.
but we had to know parts of and what they played in a sentence. But adverbs and adjectives, you know, she said if you can answer the question, which one, how many, and what kind of, then it was an adjective. And if it was
Good for you.
how, when, where, and to what degree, then it was an adverb. So see, things like that. I mean,
I don't remember that,
See,
but good on you.
Well, yeah, really. Well, see, I told you she made a real impression on me.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
She
But
was a character. She really was a character.
she took pictures at all the occasions that were around the school. Anything, be it a ball game or a play or commencement, whatever. And she took these photographs and she'd have them
on
put up on a bulletin board, and they were numbered, and then she'd have a piece of paper, and if you wanted a copy of any of those you could get for 10 cents. You'd sign up and get a copy of that picture.
Yeah,
So that's what a lot of the pictures I have are
What
ones
you
that I
have.
bought off that board.
yeah,
Because we didn't all have, our cameras didn't go around and take pictures of everything.
yeah.
Or our
This is
phones or
right,
cell
we didn't,
phones.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So, there were a husband and wife team, Jim and Gwen Legault,
Mhm.
and Jim taught English, senior English. I remember being in that, and I remember he gave this assignment, which was really quite thought provoking. If you only had one day to live, what would you do? And that was the prompt, and that really made an impression on me because I hadn't thought of mortality at that point. And Gwen Legault taught speech, and I ended up going to some regional speech thing as a representative from Chelsea. Did not score, but but nonetheless, I mean, they really encouraged me a lot. Jim particularly with writing, and Gwen with speaking. And then Al Conklin was the principal at one point, and you said he
He
taught
taught biology,
or taught bio, and he was a coach, of course.
football coach.
Yeah, and I'm sure if we had some of our male classmates here, they'd have some stories of him. But anyway, so he was also the counselor in charge of, your schedule. So I went in to him because I had this clash, yeah. And I said, well, I could either take physics or I could take something else. I don't remember what it was, but I remember he said, "You're a girl, you don't need physics." So
That's a sign of the times.
a sign of the times, yeah. And when we were in high school, it was half-court basketball
For girls.
for girls, yeah. And
They didn't think we could run the whole length of it.
but
They might have been right, I don't think so though.
But the boys, I mean, our basketball teams were very supported, and the gym had a balcony around it, and that's where largely everybody sat in the balcony, looking down.
Looking down,
Yeah, and Bob Taylor was the coach.
I had a few cousins that were very good in that game, and I enjoyed watching
The
them.
twins.
The twins and my cousin Neil. My
Neil.
cousin Neil
Oh,
Buehler
okay.
was excellent. He would shoot what now we call 3-pointers, but back then they were just 2 points. But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and our half court for the girls.
Yes.
You could only dribble 3 times, and you had to throw off to somebody too.
Ah.
You couldn't just get a good speed going. You barely got going. You had to throw
Yeah.
off to. That's craziness, but
You were talking earlier about some of the dating situations. You had some programs, some dance cards?
that was
Right.
from our proms.
Can we talk about the going up to Sylvan Hotel though? Our gym class, our entire gym class would go up to the Sylvan Hotel to bowl. And the Sylvan Hotel is the same as the Sylvan Building over
Yeah.
there.
Oh.
And so our class would go, and half of us would bowl, and half of us would set pins in the back. That was
We
a
actually did. There
gym
were no
class.
automatic,
Yeah.
pin setters
Yeah.
then.
And we had dances always after the basketball games, you were saying. And Sandy and I would frequently dance together.
That was not at all uncommon. The girls, the guys are lined up around the outside of the gymnasium watching everybody. And if you were going to dance, you had to dance with them practically,
Yeah.
unless you had a steady, boyfriend
Yeah.
or something. But
Yeah.
and about 3/4 of the way through the time, some of them would give in and
Ask you
ask
to
you
dance.
to dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we all went around,
Yes.
all around the outside of the gym. 1, 2, slide, 1, 2, slide. It was
Yeah.
just the simplest. But we did have a couple dances that we did in high school.
Gym-
Fun things called, one's the hokey pokey.
Yeah.
You
Right.
put your left foot in,
Yeah.
and then the bunny hop.
Yes.
So just stuff like that. I know you wouldn't be caught dead doing that now.
But there was one couple that could really jitterbug.
Oh, well, Ron Branham, and was he dating Donna Moore at the time?
I don't know.
Oh, he was a good dancer.
And
though.
Ron is still around.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if he still dances.
Yeah, they were good.
So one thing we wanted to talk about also was, Chelsea has such a fabulous arts program, visual arts as well as musical, strings,
music
and
program.
all we had was the band, the marching band,
Chorus.
and the chorus,
The
and
choir.
plays.
Mhm.
We did have plays, and I have programs here from, this was the play that we had our junior year, and came the spring. So see how simple the program is. And on the back, I'm reading the supporters: Chelsea Milling Company, Floyd Rowan Son, Albert Motor Sales, the pub, Bill and Doris.
Yeah, with where Cleary's is now.
Okay. George Palmer, Ford dealer, Hilltop Plumbing, heating and electrical contractors, Parker, Chelsea Cleaners. And I'm sure there were more, but so that was our junior year, and My Three Angels was our senior year. And there's something about somebody dropping me.
Really?
Yeah.
You
See, I
remember
only
that?
remember the traumatic things.
I was a student director.
You were a
That
student
one.
director, yeah. I remember, so I had to be carried out, and I think it was Bob Brown. Bob Brown had to carry me.
He dropped
He
you.
dropped me just
He'll
right off
remember- He'll
stage.
remember, we'll have to ask him.
Anyway,
He's still around.
yeah. So some of the other outside of school activities we remembered are like going up to the Sylvan Theater,
Yeah,
which
we had
a
theater
theater in
one time.
town, which was then turned into the UAW Hall, and now it's right next to the old post office. It's been rehabbed, and now it's empty. Then we had Girl Scouts. We were both in Girl Scouts, and my mom was a Girl Scout leader, and the cookies, did we only have one kind? Were 30 cents a box.
Yeah, they were. You could buy a whole box, for 30 cents. I don't know. I
They were
only, I think I
35.
only remember 35 cents or something. But I think I only remember the vanilla wafer type back then. There weren't any
Yeah.
Yeah.
mint chocolate chips or anything
Yeah.
like that.
And Judy Wagner's dad, her mom was also a leader, and her dad owned what then became Dana Corporation, and so somehow we miraculously were able to go inside the factory, go from machine to machine, and sell these cookies. But hey, if the boss's daughter is selling them, and then I remember I did this from my grandmother's house. We would I don't know who I was with. We would ride out to Kavanaugh Lake Park, which was unsupervised, no lifeguard. So we rode our bikes 4 miles, swam, and then came back.
Great.
Never thought a thing about it. And the Congregational Church was a very vibrant church at that time. It was a
Yeah.
very large.
Congregation, young
Yeah,
people were
young people.
interested. Well, because Reverend Toy was such an interesting
Yes, he was.
person.
Yeah, and particularly the Spalding family had a large house and farm, and the brother and sister, Miss Spalding was the kindergartner teacher in that Congregational Church, and they would have an all church picnic. So the kids would go out there, ride horses. We would jump out of the hay barn into the hay wagon, and it was just terrific. It was a really great time. And you got to pick out a pumpkin. Then we remember what is now it used to be called the Municipal Building. It's recently been renovated by Joe Zwolowski. It's a 3-story building on East Middle.
It used to be the police station.
Yeah, people then began to refer to it as the police station. But on the second floor was the library, and that's where my mother worked there for a short time as a librarian. But on the third floor was the youth center. So, and who
A short
started
period of
that?
time. I remember John Popovich, when he came out of the service. At some point, he joined, we had the JC's club here for the younger men, that Kiwanis, it was a junior organization for them, I think, called JC's.
Okay.
And he was a member, and it was his idea that he thought, the high school kids needed a place to go, some gathering spot, and so they took over. I don't know if they paid rent for that or what, but he got a bunch of people together, and we elected some officers, and people started donating some furniture and pool tables and ping pong tables and what have you, and record players, as we called them. And we used to meet up there on the weekend.
They have dances and organizations.
It didn't last long, but 2-3 years, I think, was about
Yeah.
the limit of that.
It was
But it was something we had at our disposal anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Fun.
It was really good. And some of the other things I remember was my mom, she was a librarian for a short time, and then she also worked at Glick's, which was a department store, and that's where the Common Grill is now. And it was just a general department store, and just, you didn't even have to be seriously considering buying shoes. You could go in there and get your feet x-rayed.
Do you remember machines like that? They could never do that now.
Explain what that was.
Right, yeah, you just got up and stood and
Slid
slipped your foot in,
You'll-
and you look down in and you'd see every bone in your foot, and see where your toe came towards the end of the shoe, if that shoe was correct for your foot. But sometimes we just did it just to look at our feet.
Yeah.
Then, who knows how many times we were exposed to radiation.
Yeah.
X-raying our feet.
You want to talk about what your mom's first?
What she did as I got older and she had the time she became one of the first door-to-door Avon ladies here in Chelsea.
For many years.
She did it for a lot of years.
Yeah.
When my kids were little, Grandma was an Avon lady.
Yeah.
And,
she walked all over.
She walked. She didn't drive. She walked all over. Well, she had a certain area of Chelsea because one of her good friends was an Avon lady too, Norma Kernan.
Okay.
And so they shared that. The town kind
We
of.
have 20 minutes left.
Okay. Very quickly then, I want to talk a little bit about Vogel's store. Helen Vogel had this store of women's wear, and on the other side was Foster's menswear. It still exists, Vogel's and Foster's. And so when I went, as I was in high school, I would get permission to buy something, and I would go in there, buy something, and she would write it down on an index card. Was that still going on when you worked there?
Similar. I'll tell you how it.
Okay, so this is how dense I was, because I thought that's the way things worked in the world. So when I went to college, I was invited my freshman year to go to the J-Hop, and I went over to Jacobson's and got a dress, and I said, write that down. And they did. Only they wrote it down.
And said it'll be X amount of dollars.
Yeah, and then, but what I didn't know was they sent a letter to my parents, because apparently by doing that I was opening up a line of credit, which my parents were not willing to go along with that. But I mean, I just thought the world worked that way. Yeah.
Well,
So-
after you've been to Vogel's and Foster's,
Right,
I can see why.
Where was
Yeah.
that?
Where it's
where
now
it's still
is
Vogel's.
Vogel's and Foster's.
Still
The Jacobsons. Where did you go to
Oh,
college?
that-
at MSU.
At East
At
Lansing.
East Lansing. Yeah, it was a very
I
large
shopped
store.
there too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, do we want to get into our social life?
Well, yeah, a little in that she and I were friends all through school, basically, but in high school especially close, and we did a lot together, and we went to both of our proms
Yes.
with the same boys. They all you went with John, I went with Bob both years. This one is our junior year, and at her house, taken at her house before we were ready to leave for the prom. And this is just to show that this was different surroundings, and it was our senior year. Yeah,
So
1958.
she went with the same boy and I went with the same boy.
Yeah, to junior and then senior, so.
Yeah. And here were the party. So this was Oriental Gardens. And what kind of flowers did we have?
Well,
strung
actually,
up?
we didn't go places and it wasn't professionally decorated or anything.
No,
We
we
did
did it.
our own decorating, and we had strung wire from one side of this balcony that she mentioned early in the gymnasium, strung wire from one side to the other. And then they went out, and I don't know if it was, now it's
Somebody-
illegal, but they went out then, I don't know if it was, but got dogwood branches, being this time of the year, in the spring. They brought in dogwood branches that were in bloom and just kind of nicely laid them onto
On
those
top,
wires. So
yeah,
it
it
made
was
like
gorgeous.
a lower
Beautiful.
ceiling for our
Yeah,
dance.
yeah.
And then we built like
Buddha.
a Buddha, a big
Yeah.
gold, sprayed it with gold paint in the center of the,
Yeah.
and I had a picture too that showed the walls. They put butcher paper all
Yeah.
over the side of the walls, and they did things like painting Mount Fuji on it, or just
Yeah.
different things so that it looked, more.
Yeah.
In the pagodas with the roof lines, and
Right.
interesting. I thought we did a great job.
That
Right.
sounds beautiful.
It was.
In our senior year, then the juniors did
that.
Candyland. And do you have a picture of that?
Well, that was the one.
Oh, that was the second one.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
so I don't know why, but I saved these dance cards.
I have them too.
Do you?
I take them to our reunions. I've had
Okay.
them at our reunions
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Which I have to, just a sideline. I was secretary in our senior year, but when I accepted that position, I always kid that I didn't know it was a lifetime commitment. Might have had second thoughts. But anyway, I've kept correspondence all these years for our reunions, and for the most part, we held them every 5 years until we got up to a certain point, and we had them every year.
For a while.
Uh-huh.
And I set up a blog spot for
Uh-huh.
that. So we have the blog spot is
do
there.
you still?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But see, we're older, we're at that age, or we're having just lunches now instead of we used to do a 3-day thing
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah.
and for several years.
And now, unfortunately, the blog spot has become an announcement of
Yeah.
the upcoming luncheon and now obituaries.
Yeah,
So,
way too many.
way too many. So, how about, do you want to talk about New York or not?
Oh, just a funny thing, that was another thing I worked on that too, getting ready for where we were going on a senior trip. That was back then. You took senior trips and the whole class participated. It wasn't, some went to Florida and some went on a boat and some,
Yeah.
our whole class participated, and we chose New York City that year. And I was thinking, it was so funny, I came across this picture when, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us, including Janet and myself and a couple other friends. I don't know if you can see this, it may be too small, but
Hold it
we
up a little bit.
we dressed up to get on a school bus and ride to Detroit to get on the train that took us to New York City. I cannot believe how we dressed up for that.
Yes, and gloves and everything.
Yeah, the whole hats,
Yeah.
purses, everything matching. It was just too funny.
Yes, North.
So that was, and that was we had quite a few nice things to do there.
Yes,
in
yeah.
there. We went some went to the Statue of Liberty, some went to Coney Island, some went to Hayden's Planetarium, and we saw the Radio City Music Hall with the
Yes.
dancers, and we went to the Copacabana,
Uh-huh.
and
I have a
Johnny
picture of
Johnny
that.
Mathis was performing, who at that time was
Big.
a big name.
Yeah.
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 And
I have that picture.
we stayed in
yeah.
the Hotel New Yorker, it was called.
Mhm.
And many, many years later, I went back with a group of women, and we stayed at, it was something called the New Yorker, but it wasn't that hotel, I don't think. Wouldn't it be something if it was though? But it was called Radio City Apartments, that's what it was called.
Oh, okay.
But it looked like it was in the area.
Yeah. And I've not been back to New York
Yeah.
since then.
Yeah.
So we were the last class to graduate then
Okay.
from that school. And I wanted to mention, we were talking about clubs and things to do outside of school. And I've mentioned about Mom, and one of the things that she did was she was in the Child Study Club. Now this study club was started in 1935. This little pamphlet is from, I think, 44, 45. So I was 4 years old, almost 5, when she was there. Can I read the,
Sure.
So the objective was to associate together for the purpose of parent education and child nurture. Colors, pink and blue.
What else, right?
So Sandy, then, as a young mother, so I ran away from home, meaning I left home
Not literally.
at 17, but Sandy remained here, and so she was in the Child Study Club.
I was in that same club that her mother was in all those years before. And I just have to show you the change of the programs. We had program committees, and the first, like this, and probably one of the earliest ones that I was involved with was this, with a plastic cover like this that looks like stone. And then a clever one done looking like a slate, front and back. It was really cute done. And these were our program things. Then it got really kind of fancy, and we have homemade, I'm not sure, but Marge Daniels might have had something to do with it. It was the cross stitch with a padded thing and lace.
Yeah.
But yes, we had, the programs were basically, it's this crazy name I always thought, the Chelsea Child Study Club. And they said, what do you do, study children, Child Study Club? I said, well, no, but you have related programs and speakers, and some were doctors, and just, it was informative, very informative. But we also did social things. We had husband's night and what have you. And we were philanthropic. I mean, we held Christmas sales and
Did you donate
craft
money?
We did craft things. Yeah, we did, and we
Okay.
did crafts and sold them to earn money to do our.
And how many children do you have?
I have 4 girls, and should I
Talk
go
about
from there? I mean, just the.
And so
how this all
I did
started.
not raise my children here, but
Right.
Sandy did.
Yeah, because again, I hadn't gone anyplace, I was here. But I had gone to school for 1 semester at Eastern, and then that wasn't going to work. Financially, I was going to have a problem. So, I would have had to stay single and live till I was about 40 before I could get married, I think, so I could pay back so at any rate, I dropped that and I went crying to this fellow in the dairy bar. It was called Weber's Dairy Bar.
It used to be called Oni's.
Yeah, it was Oni's
a,
when we were in high school.
a hangout when
Yeah,
we
for
were
the kids.
Yeah.
But at this point, it was Weber's Dairy Bar, and turns out it's the brother of the fellow I was dating in high school. But I started working for him, and I always kid that then I worked for him the rest of his life because we ended up getting married. But I was just what would you say? Baptism by fire. I started working there, and it was the summer that we had the centennial business. The first one, it was actually the 125th. What did they call that?
I don't know.
Well, at any rate, it was in the summer of 63, I think it was. No. Anyway, I worked there during that, and I never got to see any of the events that were taking place because I was working all the time. We were so busy that this dairy bar was right downtown, and
Yes.
everything else was
That's
happening
where the cleaners
downtown.
is now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
right where the cleaners
Yeah.
is, and busy times, but fun and exciting that was. And then he sold the dairy bar, and we bought a house over on the corner of Orchard and East, a big old Victorian house, and we had 1 4-month-old baby and no furniture, and we moved into that house, and I am still living in that house 54 years later. And but I did, we raised the 4 girls there. My husband passed away way too early at the ripe old age of 58. But when he sold the dairy bar, he worked with his brother. They were in the carpentry business, and his brother was a contractor. And he did that for several years, and he was very active on this. It was the village then, the village council, and he even ran for president one year. And he was elected, but he only was president for 5 minutes. So they've got a mug and everything that says that at home. It's cute. Because they knew they needed something like a village administrator or something for the first time, because things were getting bigger and
what was his full
busier.
name?
Frederick Weber.
Fritz.
Yeah, Fritz Weber. He was always Fritz to us, but no, Frederick Weber. And he was the first village administrator, and he was in that post for those next 20 years. And he still was when he passed, but,
And very active in softball.
oh gosh, we both were, because
Yeah.
all three of our four girls were big fans of softball, and they played well, and they were a part of the first state championships from Chelsea. In 1980, my second oldest daughter was on that team, and the younger one was brought up to go along with them. And then when she was a senior in 1985, her team won state championship, and her younger sister was brought up to play on. It was just it's probably one of the best times of my life was following those girls around, because they played ball during the summers too, up in Petoskey and all over.
And a field is named after.
Oh yeah, the softball fields down here were Fritz's name, because he was paramount. He worked on getting the grants for having those fields built, and so after he passed, they wanted to name those fields after him. So
It's awesome.
yeah.
What about your family, Jan?
My family.
Yeah, don't
Well,
you?
I lived all around. It's sort of like, I lived in a lot of rented places before my dad built a house. I lived in a variety of places. Too many. I lived twice in Southern Ohio, Miami University. I had 2 children, Andrew and Megan. Andrew died in a car accident when he was 17. And so my challenge then was to, hold the rudder steady. I then was divorced, and I kept my married name until my daughter got married, and she said, "I'm going to change my name and take Andy's name." I said, "What? What am I doing then with this name?" So I took my birth name back then.
We have 5 minutes.
Okay. Do you want to talk about your
No,
girls? Well,
we kind of did about the softball and everything, and they're all married.
yeah.
And I have I have 4 grandchildren. One of the daughters has a boy and a girl, and another one has a boy and a girl. So, and then I started following them in their sports events and things, and we get together a lot. I feel fortunate they're all in the area, so we get together on holidays and birthdays.
Oh, a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not able to do that. My daughter lives her family live in Midland, and whereas they used to come and visit me a lot, the grandchildren, we do a handoff in Owasso in a parking lot. So they drive down to Owasso, I get the kids and bring them here. But now they're just so busy as, involved in sports.
And
So.
the house that you purchased is...
It's 1 block from Sandy's. So, even though I was gone for 47 years,
Yeah.
I still kept in touch because my folks lived here.
Right.
In fact, we would get together with Kay Vogel and Nancy. Yeah, and Susie. And so I kept in touch all these years. But, I don't think of myself as being a Chelsea person totally, because I've had so many other experiences.
What about your involvement with this historic?
Well, at first I was involved with Preservation Chelsea, which was a spin-off of the Historic Society some time ago. And then Preservation Chelsea merged with the Historic Society, so I'm involved in that. For instance, the mural, the Way of Life mural that has been remounted on the post office. I did the research and got the text that's going to be underneath, so it will explain the mural, the symbolism of it, and who did it. So I'm having a good time with the Historic Society now. Yeah, really am, and I'm really happy that the Mac building is going to be renovated and repurposed. There are going to be, I don't know what's going downstairs, but there's going to be 4 apartments upstairs. That's the same man who did the municipal building, and he also did a much needed renovation on the corner of Chelsea Chelsea, Dexter Road, and McKinley. He did that in a year and brought that back. So we have a lot of interest in bringing houses back now. And I am in charge of co-chairing the holiday home tour. So I'm in the process of securing homes for that tour. And one of them was the house that her husband grew up in. It's been renovated, and it's going to be on the tour. So there's a whole lot of connections.
A lot of tie-ins. And you talked about the hot dog eating at the meat market. That was turned out to be my father-in-law. it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I worked at Vogels and Foster's, and we had the same system that she tried to pull at Jacobson's. We were so trusting back then, you know? I mean, people would come in and they didn't feel like trying things on, so we would just write it up on a slip and put how much they were and everything, and they would sign the paper that they took them home. They take them home and try them on and bring back what they didn't want and pay for what they wanted.
Yeah, awesome.
It was, wasn't it? It's just a great,
Hey, 1 minute.
okay. I don't know what we've missed.
Well, you know, I feel like I haven't come home again, but I've come to a place that I really appreciate. I love all the activities. I mean, I deliberately moved here not to move back home because, in fact, Chelsea isn't like it used to be, but I moved here because of all the activities that are going on in Chelsea. There's so much to engage in. The Adult Learners Program, I was active in that. I take classes in that all the time. At one time there was it was called Canopas. They stood vigil on the corner every Sunday from the invasion of Iraq to the status of troops. And so that gave me a place to go every Sunday to, you know, make my statement just by physically standing on that. So a lot of the values that, you know, I've collected over the years seem to be expressed here. And